Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 34 of the LiveCast Conversations With. As always, I'm your host, Gene Bernier. And on the show today, we have Michael Saltzman. Michael is a mentor, author, and fitness influencer. Michael uses TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram to share his story about losing 121 pounds in 12 months and how he continues to keep it off after 2 years plus now. Michael shares insights he has learned with his community and uses his voice to raise others up. For 1 year, Michael chronicled his journey, redefining what health meant to him. He literally wrote the book, You Can't Do It Until You Believe in Yourself, all about that journey, which is a reflection on the struggles with his weight. He looks back on why he chose to eat unhealthy foods for so many years and discovered how he could change his bad habits to form great ones. He achieved and surpassed his health goals through a balanced diet, daily workouts, hard work, dedication, and most importantly, consistency. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, Gene, I love being here. I'm already excited, and let's get to it.
Yeah, let's get right into it. So 121 pounds in a year, that's an incredible journey. And I can only imagine the amount of work, both physically and mentally, that had to go into achieve that and then not get trapped into the world of yo-yo diets where it all comes flying right back as soon as you think you can take the foot off the gas.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that helped me this time was in hindsight, the two failures I had before. I had lost weight twice before. I'd lost 50 pounds earlier in my life. I'd lost 80 pounds a time before that. And so I had lost weight and gained back all the weight and then some twice. So when I went into this journey, I knew that the approach I had the first two times was only half accurate, and that I needed to figure out how to keep the weight off. But in the meantime, I also had to figure out if I was even doing the best approach to the weight loss in the first place. Because when you fail at something, you have to figure out what the mistakes are, or you're going to repeat them. And I had repeated them a second time. So after the second failure, it's like, all right, this is on me now. Okay, I maybe have lost a lot of weight, but clearly there's something missing here. And so the biggest kind of epiphany, kind of aha moment I had was what turned out to be the title of the book, is that so many times we tell ourselves that we can do something. It's, you can do it. I always, as a coach, I've coached sports all my life, and played sports. It's like, you always tell your teammates or your players, like, you can do this. But the reality is that if you don't believe in yourself, it doesn't really matter what somebody else says. And ultimately, I think also it was about a matter of reflection, like literally the reflection, like look in the mirror, tell yourself that you can do it, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't believe it. Yeah. And so that's where it kind of came to me, was like, actually, I can't do this until I believe in myself. And what that meant to me when I first started was, I have to believe that this is not about just weight loss. And I got away from caring about the scale as the number one thing, because that was my biggest thing. It's like, oh, I'm 280 pounds, I'm 310 pounds, whatever weight I was when I started the previous journeys. And it was like, okay, I just want to get to 230, or I just want to get, like, when I cared about the number I got to, that made it more complicated. Not just because getting that there would sound like the horns, like, hey, you did it, you're done. But what does that even mean? Like, that's just a number still. Like, it's just a better number. But what do I do with that number? If I just get there, I've actually not accomplished anything yet, because the whole goal should be to keep it off. And so that was something I've actually learned over time going through this journey. It was like, in real time, I was realizing, okay, to keep it off is actually phase 2. Like, phase 1 is weight loss, and people are good at that. People can find ways to lose weight, but that's only phase 1. And phase 2 is keep it off for the rest of your life. So it's a completely different mindset and a completely different goal, because you could be like, I want to lose 30 pounds in 6 months, or whatever the numbers are. Anyone can do that. Like, and that's just learning the numbers of, learning the math of weight loss. But keeping it off is a completely different thing. And it's a matter of learning how to create those habits to stay and stick, and keep the diet similar, and keep the workouts similar, and not really change anything between the two. And most people aren't ready for that, because as soon as they get to a goal weight, they decide, okay, let's, now I can celebrate with this meal over here, or I can skip a workout here and there, because then those bad habits come creeping back a lot faster than you realize. And suddenly you lose it altogether and you're right back where you started. And it happens to everyone. It happened to me twice. So it really was about a journey to health instead of a weight loss journey. And a journey to health meant things like soda, which was really kind of an addiction for me. I had to just cut out altogether. Some people, they can have a soda a day and be fine. I was drinking so much diet soda in my weight loss journeys the first 2 times because I could get away with it, but it wasn't a healthy approach to my life. It wasn't a healthy approach to my diet to have so much diet soda every single day. So for me, it was like, okay, look, I need to see, or what am I actually doing that's healthy? What am I doing that's not? And the things that I'm not, what can I minimize or control or just avoid altogether? So there were certain things I just had to cut out altogether. And once I had that approach, it was okay. It's not so much about the weight loss, although I did lose the 120 pounds in a year and was documenting that, but it was more about what am I doing today to be healthy? And when it was a daily approach of just looking at, all right, are the foods I'm choosing healthy options? If they're not, am I making sure I'm controlling the portions? What are the workouts I'm doing? Are they healthy for my body right now? I was 38 years old when I started. I'm 40 now. I can't do the things I was doing when I was 20. So I can't lift the heavy weights I was lifting before. I can't do the sprints I was doing before. I have to make sure the workouts make sense for who I am now as a 40-year-old, where I was as a 38-year-old versus what I was when I was in college. Yeah. And so all of those things led to working out the daily plans for myself. And in that way, every single person that goes on their own journey is going to have to learn to customize the journey for themselves, because not everyone has my background, can't do the same workouts I do. And some of them are going to do much more advanced stuff than I do. And it's because they're in a different place than I am.
There's a lot to unpack there. The big thing that kind of stood out about all that, the one thing I want to kind of dive into is you talked about how you've reshaped the idea of being healthy from a goalpost to a journey, right? So I hear that from going from like, I've got a goal versus I'm living by values. Right. So you've got this value of health. What was your stories around health before, and how are they shaped differently now to bring that beast out of you?
Well, I think in the simplest form, my approach initially when the first time I tried to lose weight, because I never really was worried about weight loss when I was a player in high school and college. I ate terribly. Like, full disclosure, I ate terrible my entire high school and college career, but I was playing sports the entire time. So I was burning so many calories that even if I was gaining weight, I wasn't gaining a ton of weight, and I was still able to do the things I was trying to do. So it never really hurt me the way it probably should have. And maybe in some ways, maybe in hindsight, I wish it could have, because it might have gotten me to straighten up a little bit. But once I got to be an adult and I started gaining weight, because I wasn't now playing sports, I wasn't working out anywhere near as many hours as I was before. So suddenly all this weight was just ballooning up on me. It was like, all right, what's my approach? And my approach initially was, in essence, a pretty lazy approach of like, kind of, what can I get away with? Right. So something like diet soda was like, I was drinking diet soda anyway. And because it was 0 calories, like, it was like, okay, I can still drink that, no problem, because it's 0 calories. And so it was something that was unhealthy that I was allowing myself to continue having. And it actually made me drink it a lot more, because I looked at the approach of, well, I can get away with this. And then I would also eat other unhealthy foods, but just eat less of it. So my first time losing weight, I lost 50 pounds. I didn't actually have much of a healthy diet as far as what someone would traditionally look at as healthy foods, but I was portion controlling my food. So I was having less of it, which did allow me to lose weight. And because I was working out on top of eating less, I was losing weight. And so it was working, but it wasn't really the healthiest approach for me, because some of the foods I was eating were also foods that were kind of trigger foods for me. It was foods that I could easily overeat. And so once I hit my goal weight, I would start eating more and more of those foods that I wasn't letting myself, be more careful about. Yeah. And that's why I gained all the weight back the first time, was because I wasn't eating healthier options. I was eating unhealthy things less. So then it made it very easy to eat bigger portions of those once I got to my goal weight, because I was giving myself the freedom to be like, well, you've worked so hard. You can have this now, or you can have more of this now. And the more you start making excuses, the easier it is to make more of them. And so just like any habit, now all of a sudden those bad habits were creeping back until they were becoming my norm again.
Right. And it's like when you break down a habit, the reality is that there's like a trigger and action that you're taking and a consequence for it.
Right.
And so that trigger was always still there until you made that conscious choice of going, look, diet soda is not really diet, and this is actually adding bad things to me. I feel this trigger. I'm assuming you've found a replacement or something to deal with what happens when that trigger comes up for you.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the things, like when people have messaged me, it's like, hey, what's your diet? Hey, can you give me some advice? The first thing I'll tell them is, I can give you my diet, but the first thing you should do is find healthy food you enjoy. Yeah. And the word healthy next to food can have this really weird meaning, because technically almost any food can become unhealthy if you have too much of it, or it's very hard, that when you list out what's considered like healthy food versus unhealthy food, there's such a short list of what would be considered healthy, because if someone has diabetes, there goes all the fruit. If there's even things like avocados or almonds or other things that are good for you. Well, if you have too much of it, then that can be bad. It's like, so you just have to realize that the healthy, unhealthy around food is a lot more about portion control than it is about actual whether they're bad for you or good for you. Yeah. And once you start to have a healthier relationship with food in general, and realize that you don't need to overeat ever. And if you're eating smaller portions more times throughout the day, I mean, I usually eat about 6 times a day, and I'm only eating maybe 300 to 500 calories at a time. So because of that, I'm never really starving ever. I'm never super hungry ever. And I know that if I miss a meal in a whatever time I thought I was going to eat, I'm going to end up being able to eat in a couple hours anyway, based on kind of how I've set my life up. So the few times that I'll end up not being able to eat for several hours, if something happens where I'm kind of away from any of my food options, I'm fine, because I'll just be able to eat something when I get back, and I've eaten something up to that point. So some people, whether they do intermittent fasting or whether they only eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or whatever the case is, for some people, skipping a meal can actually really be damaging, because they need that food, they need that sustenance, they need that nutrition, and they're not giving it to themselves. I'm eating enough calories throughout the day, especially now that I'm on maintenance, where if I end up not eating for a while, I'm fine. And it took time to realize that. It took time to understand that. But once you understand that, then it becomes so much easier, because people, I think people right now, the majority of people that are listening to your show, and the majority of people that follow me about my journey, they get hungry at 12 o'clock, no matter when they've eaten. They get hungry around 5 or 6, no matter when they've eaten, because they've been trained, their body's been trained to be hungry at lunchtime and hungry at dinner time. So even if you ate at 3 or 4 o'clock, if your family usually ate at 5, you're like, oh, I should be eating something right now. And that doesn't make any sense in reality, but you've done that to your body. You've trained yourself to be like, oh, I'm hungry now. And, I have my taste buds are aching for something right now. And because of that, I think that's one of the things, being able to kind of deconstruct and understand like how to break that down mentally. That's where it really becomes the challenge, is that over time, how can I get better? And I'm 2.5 years into this journey since I started my weight loss journey. And I'm still like these last few weeks, I'm still learning as I go, as far as what to do and how to do it, and what's best for me and what's not. And I still make mistakes all the time. It's just that I'm able to manage those mistakes a lot better now, because I understand the long-term goals is just health. And I understand that the short-term goals aren't really that important. They're just hopeful. Like, I hope to be under 3,000 calories a day with my food, because that's where my maintenance number is. So if I eat 3,200, doesn't matter. I'll eat 2,900 the next day. I'll be fine. If I eat 2,800, I'm fine. I'll have some cushion for the next day. It's like, that's the point, is that I don't have to be perfect. Right. I get on the scale like once a month now, if that, because it doesn't really matter. I know that if I get my calories right and I'm working out each day and I get my steps in, I'm fine. My numbers will be where they need to be, because I'm making enough healthy choices throughout the day.
Right. You understand what your ideal day is, but you're also not like set and bound, be like, every day has to be ideal. Every day we talked about before the show started, we were talking about what a good day, a great day. And then there's this ideal day. Be like,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're consistently showing up, doing that good day, working towards the great, and sometimes hitting the ideal, like that, that's a really powerful life to be able to have, right?
Well, and I think it's like I'm at about 136 pounds that I've lost now total, and I didn't even mean to lose. To be perfectly honest, I didn't even mean to lose the last 16 pounds.
Yeah.
It's just that I've been a little bit more disciplined with my diet this last few months, and I was doing pretty good even through the pandemic as far as making sure I got my workouts in and trying to be healthy. And so I lost even more weight since then when I started. And the reality is that none of that even matters if I gain a few pounds here or there. It doesn't matter. It's more about understanding that the long-term goals are what really does matter, and that if I'm making mistakes, it's okay as long as I understand that I made those mistakes and I identify them and I realize, okay, was that avoidable? Cool. Let me work with that. If it wasn't avoidable, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Yeah. And again, I think that's what really comes down to is understanding that in 2.5 years, I've probably had 3 ideal days and, almost 900 really good days. Yeah. But it wouldn't be considered really good days if I had a really pessimistic view of my day, because it's like I made mistakes almost every day, like having a snack maybe I shouldn't have had, or I didn't really need to have that food, but I had it anyway. I had an extra protein bar I shouldn't have had, whatever the mistake was. It still was a good day. I worked out, I ate healthy, I hit my goals and a lot of other things. Like even if it wasn't a perfect day, it was still a good day. Yeah. And that's the reality, is that I've built so many good days that even the quote unquote bad days got minimized because, I knew I was, whether it was like Thanksgiving or whatever it was, I planned out my meals so that I could have my Thanksgiving dinner and then still be at my numbers, because I just had a little bit less before and after, or I had a little bit less the next couple days, or I had a little bit less the couple days before because I knew what day it was. And those kind of things. We don't always know that. We don't always know when someone's going to have a party at work, or if someone's going to, take out everyone at work or everyone in the family is going to go to some big event. We don't always know when that's going to happen. And so when it does, and if cake and pizza are the only things that are there, okay, you're maybe put in a spot that might be dangerous for some people. It's like, okay, well, if you normally in those situations would have 4 slices of pizza, try having 3. If you normally have 6 pieces of cake, have 2. Those decisions aren't going to be amazing, but they're certainly better. And one of the things I've always tried to teach people is to really, really embrace the word better, because it's one of the best words in the English language. Because even when we're bad, if we're better than we were, then that's still something that still has to matter. And when we're better every day, it's amazing how much better we can get.
Oh, I love that. Like by changing the concept of, oh, was this a bad day versus did we do better? Can we do better? And right. And viewing it from that angle, and waking up every day going, every day is day one, more or less. Like if you right. want to look at it and be realistic with it, especially when you're working on trying to figure out like what are your triggers, and you're early in that journey about, what does health mean to me? Am I just here doing weight loss, or do I want to, like, one of my personal visions is I want to have a dance party when I'm 100. So if I miss a workout, that has more meaning from putting it at the lens of that 100-year-old versus going, oh, I'm a bad person for not doing that workout today, right? Like right. Does those, like you said, you had a handful of like better days or days that had mistakes in them versus the 900 great to good days that you had. Like that's right. really important.
Well, and I think too, it's that, when I talk about, hard work, dedication, consistency, what it really comes down to is momentum. Are you building momentum towards something positive? Yeah. And if you did, because, if you have a really rotten day, you find out that you've lost your job, or someone in your family's sick, or, this pandemic has led to so much disaster in so many lives that have just completely 180 people's entire sense of self, let alone everything else. Yeah. And so when you have a day like that, where it's just a hammer of a day, the healthiest thing you could do maybe is to do nothing, is to not put any pressure on yourself to do anything. but to just be. And then when you wake up in the morning, it's a blessing that you woke up in the morning. So then maybe find something to do, go for a walk to try to clear your head or whatever, get your steps in, do some yoga just to try to get your mind right. But, if you had planned to go for, a big workout or to, go to the gym and your gym gets closed, it's like, well, then how do you react to that? And if you react negatively, that's not the worst thing in the world. But if you react negatively every day after that, then that is ultimately on you. You have to find a way to get out of that bad momentum and move towards some positive momentum. It's the one of the things I've kind of preached the last couple of years to people is that, we use the word excuses all the time, but it's always given a negative, connotation. And really it's more about positive excuses. Make an excuse to work out, make an excuse to find time to go to the grocery store and get the food you need to get, make time for the things that matter to you, but make excuses to do the things you should do. People are, I get messaged all the time. It's like, well, I work full time and I have a family. When am I supposed to work out? And I said, anything you want to do, you're going to make time for it. Like you're messaging me on TikTok right now. You found time to do that. So walk in place while you're doing that. Go for a walk while you're messaging me. Go up and down the grocery store aisles while you're watching TikTok and go pick out some healthy food and then come home. I don't want to ever suggest that anything I'm saying is easy, but you can always make time for what matters. If you get a 15-minute yoga session in every morning, or you get in some stretching in every night, that's more than you were doing before. So even if that's not going to help you lose 200 pounds, it's not going to hurt you. And it's going to make you a better version of yourself if you're doing things like that all the time. And that 15 minutes might turn into 30 or 45, because maybe you'll be able to start getting better sleep, and then you'll be able to wake up earlier, or go to bed sooner, all those kind of things. But again, it goes back to the idea of momentum. If you're building positive momentum, then that's going to lead to more consistency, more dedication, and more hard work, because now you've got all these positive memories in your rear view. When someone goes to a gym for the first time, they're scared to death that what their plans are going to match what they actually do. But once they've been to the gym for a couple of months, it's amazing how much more of a rhythm they get in and how much more comfortable they feel. Right. Yeah. So many people that I've talked to in the last year were crushed by COVID because of all the things that happened, not being able to go to the gym was one of the things that hurt them the most, because it was one of those things that they had gotten into a rhythm with. They felt so comfortable going to the gym every day and feeling like that was their safe space. They could get their workouts in, those kind of things. And so, suddenly having to work out at home might feel like it's a totally different experience. But that's what I did. And that's what so many people had to find ways to do. It was really hard to find equipment. I found what I could. It was really hard to find safe places to work out, but I found what I could. And it wasn't ideal, but it was what I had at the time. And, life is going to get in the way a lot of times, and life can be relentless that way. So make an excuse to find time, to make time to do it however you can. And that might mean that you're just going for a walk every night. Okay. That's not an ideal workout, but it's certainly more than you might have done if you had just been sitting around upset that the gym was closed. Right. Yeah, you got to go find something to do.
It's looking at what do you have control of, right?
Right. Absolutely.
The ultimate control is like, you're going to feel those things regardless, because stuff's happening. Your ultimate control is like what your choice is next, right? Like you could choose to sit on the couch and pound through a bag of Doritos, or you could go for a walk, or you could start doing push-ups, or the decision tree is very wide after that feeling comes up for people. And it sometimes we default to the thing that keeps that feeling going on. If they're feeling sad and miserable, well, maybe they haven't built the capacity to stop and go, do I want to keep feeling sad and miserable? But default is like, oh, I'm feeling sad and miserable, so I'm going to do things that make me feel sad and miserable, versus going, oh, I'm feeling this. Actually, do I have the power to change this right now? Guess what? You totally do. You could just change your body. You could dance in spot, right? Like when I'm listening to this, the word that keeps coming up for me is like build capacity. And regardless of where you're at, like, yeah, everyone through COVID had to rechange it and change what that meant for them. But maybe building capacity meant getting into some yoga where, if you're a weightlifter before, be like, oh, now I'm stretching. It's a hard workout. It can be.
Right.
Or you've never strapped your shoes on to go think about even going for a jog or a run. Be like, oh, that's a thing I'll do one point. Be like, no, just like walk to the next
Right.
light post. Like walk to the
Right.
next. Just get started with that one. And like you say, you start to build that rhythm, but it's you build a capacity within yourself to trust yourself that you're going to do it, and then your body has now this new capacity with its muscles that it's building to get there.
Well, I was in a really fortunate position, as it turned out, because I was looking at myself after 2019. So I'd lost all my weight in July of 2019. And so from when I hit my 121 pounds in a year, when I hit that number, I was like, wow, I got under 200 pounds. I was 320 before. This is amazing. Now my goal is to keep it off. And so from the end of July until the end of December in 2019, I had done that. I was still where I needed to be weight-wise. I was in the 190s, so I was feeling good. But I was kind of reevaluating, all the workouts I had done. And I was like, when I was losing weight, I was doing a lot more Stairmaster, a lot more spin classes, a lot more cardio. And once I hit my weight goals, I stopped doing most of my cardio, and I started doing more weightlifting. And I realized the reason was because it was just more convenient for me. It was easier. It was something I liked a little bit more. I wasn't trying to lose weight anymore. So I was getting away from some of the cardio. And so I was like, 5 years ago when I had lost weight, I actually ended up running a half marathon. When I started training for that, and about 7 months into training, I actually ran a half marathon. And I'm a sprinter, so like any long distance voluntary was like was never a thing for me all through school. I was like, no, that's different. That's slow twitch muscle, guys. I'm a fast twitch guy. That's not me. Yeah. But then a friend of mine's like, hey, I'm running this half marathon for this cause. You want to run with me? And I was like, no way. But I was trying to lose weight at the time, so I was like, actually, who cares if I just train for this, even whether I run it or not? Like, this could be really good for me. Yeah. And I ended up really enjoying it. But I got away from that and gained all the weight back. So now that I had gotten my weight goal, I was like, maybe I should start running again, because I really enjoyed that. So I started trying to run again, and I was, I get on the treadmill and hardly could do a mile without stopping. And this is, I had trained for a half marathon. So I thought in my head, I was like, well, my muscle memory alone, I should be good to run 5 or 6 miles, even if it's a 14 or 15 minute pace, because I did it before. And now I've lost so much weight, it should be easy. And it wasn't, because when I ran the half marathon, I was like maybe 230. And so now I'm under 200. I'm like, this is going to be, real easy to get back into. Yeah. And it wasn't. So it just kind of reminded me of some things of like, anything that you need to do, you got to put the time into. And so I did that. I started putting the time into it. And so when COVID hit in March, I had been trying to run for a few months. And so I was like, well, let me keep it going. And sure enough, 750 miles later, I had run that many miles in 2020. And it was amazing because there wasn't that many things I could do with the pandemic. So, putting a mask on and jogging around my neighborhood was like what I started doing. And so it ended up being a really kind of fortunate thing in that way, because if my goal in 2020 was to really get into weightlifting, it would have been a lot more complicated if suddenly now I can't go to the gym at all. So it kind of worked out that way. And so this year I've actually picked it up even more, and I'm running about 120 miles a month now.
Holy cow.
And it really is one of those things where it becomes kind of cathartic to me. It gives me some time to just have some space for myself. I go for a run at an 8 or 9 minute pace. When 5 years ago, when I did the half marathon, I was running like a 14-minute pace. So it's like, it's unbelievable what you can do when you put enough time into something. Yeah. And that to me is the bigger thing as far as how I can relate that to other people, is that not to say that everyone needs to learn how to run a half marathon. Like, that's not a thing. But if you put enough time into something, even if something you've never done before, like me running long distance, now I can do it pretty comfortably and be able to do it without much stress at all. And that's something I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd ever do. So just imagine if I put that same kind of time and effort into playing the guitar or something else. Like, I don't know how to play the guitar at all right now, but if I put enough time in every day for a couple of years, I could play some songs for you, You know, I'm not going to necessarily be able to tour, but I could play the guitar a lot better than I did the 2 years prior.
Yeah.
And that's the point, is that you put enough time into something, good or bad, and it's going to happen. So you start being lazy every day, you're going to get really good at being lazy, and it's going to lead to a much different life.
It's an interesting take on it. You saying you could get really good at being lazy, and that's something I've never heard anybody like use that phrasing before. It's usually, oh, lazy is this bad thing. Now, to me and you, maybe yes, but like it's like anything else. Whatever you put your time into is what you get good at. So if you're getting good at and you also flipped my thinking around excuses as well. You know, like good or bad excuses. It's just an excuse. It's not one way or the other. Be like, you're making an excuse for what you want, right? Like if you wanted that piece of cake, well, you made the excuse, which is just the logical wrapper around the feeling of like, I want that cake. So you did it without thinking. And then you use the logic and the excuse after the fact to go, it was okay, right? We're good with this?
Well, and I think too, like, you know, when someone, you know, if someone, you know, goes for a long run and it's like, yeah, I deserve a donut, you know, nothing bad's going to happen. Like that's okay. Yeah. But it's like, you can also make the case, well, what if I don't have that donut and I have something healthy instead? And, you know, it's like, you know, all of those things can work. I think one of the things I try to do, and I've been an English teacher now for over a dozen years. So I think words just matter to me in that way, where it's like, you know, let's use words the ways that they can be used, not just the ways they're thought to be used. But you know, the word, like again, the word excuse doesn't have to be a negative thing. And when we look at other things, it's like the idea of what a healthy food is or an unhealthy food is. It's like, well, you know, if you drink enough water, it's unhealthy too. Yeah. You know, there's a point where you should stop drinking water for the day. Like you've had too much. It's like, and even the most healthy thing in the world can still be unhealthy in the wrong setting. So, you know, I put together a diet that I just kind of made up on the spot, but it was like, you know, if I had, you know, a couple slices of pizza for dinner, a couple cheeseburgers for lunch, you know, I forgot what I think I put like you know, waffles and syrup for breakfast, like, but I portioned them out so that it came to 3,000 calories, or I think I might have done even 2,500, but it was like, I could have that every day and be the same weight that I am now. The problem with that for me specifically is that those foods, it's really hard for me to just have that much and not have more. I'm the kind of person that if you put a large pizza in front of me, I might have all 12 or 16 slices and then say, what's for dinner? Like that was my portion size for pizza, where it almost felt like I had a separate stomach for pizza. And, and so because that's how I consumed pizza, that kind of, I look at it as a trigger food. It's like, that's a food that I'm not going to just be able to have one slice. Some people with like sweets, they can have a donut and then that's it. Just have the one. Other people, they have 7 donuts and then they start to say, hey, maybe I should stop. Yeah. And so if someone's able to have a donut every day, they can have one donut and be fine. Because even if it's 400 or 500 calories for the one donut, in the grand scheme of the day, it's not that much. Yeah. But it's about if you're doing that because it's the only option, or if you're doing that because you just want to have a treat, all those reasons are fine. There's nothing wrong with those. It's that, are you doing it, and is what you're doing going to lead to more bad mistakes more often? Right. And if that's going to happen, then you just have to be more careful. Yeah. Because this idea that, you know, you have to have a plant-based diet, or you have to have, you know, lean proteins all the time, or you have to cut out carbs, like all of that is garbage in a way too. Like that can really lead to some dangerous restrictive behaviors that's going to lead to binge eating, and it's going to lead to really bad habits and lead to people going the complete opposite because they're trying to be too perfect. Yeah. And the reality is, it's like, no, you can learn some things from a plant-based diet and see some of the reasons why, and then maybe incorporate more plant-based foods in your diet total. That's great. That's fine. You don't have to be exclusive to that though. It's okay to have other things. And so many people that follow me are young, especially on TikTok. So I'm not going to pretend for a second that it makes any kind of sense to tell someone who's 12 or 13 to be in any kind of specific diet, because that's just way too restrictive, and their bodies are still developing and growing. They should not be on any kind of restrictive diet unless it's literally like by a doctor saying like, look, actually you have certain conditions that make it where you actually need to be on this diet to survive. That's a complete outlier. 99% of teenagers should not be concerned about being on a specific diet. They should just be more aware of what they're eating and just try to be more careful about their portion size. But the idea that it's like, no, don't ever eat such and such. Like, you can technically eat anything. It's just a matter of how much of it.
Yeah.
I could create a fast food diet where I would lose weight on fast food and I could pick anything off the menu. Basically, it would just mean that it'd be way harder to sustain that, because those are the kinds of foods that I would tend to overeat.
Right.
I'm not the kind of person that can get a small fry and be like, oh, it's good, I'm done. Like, I would get the largest fry they offer and eat all of them. And so because that's my portion size, that's a food that I have to be really careful with. So that's what it really comes down to for me.
Yeah, it's that awareness in yourself about what it is good. And when you're talking about like the restrictive diets and everything else, it's like when you talked about like, it's okay to go have the donut, and I add, and if you don't, if it's not going to lead to you being guilty or putting yourself down, treat yourself. But if you're going to do it and it adds to that story of I'm no good, like this negative story that's leading you right back down to chasing those old bad habits, then don't do it. Cut it out. Is like, remove those external factors that are going to lead you to saying I'm not good enough. I can't do this because I don't believe in myself.
Well, and again, that's what it goes back to. I think from where I started was those first two diets, I was just trying to lose weight. This third diet now, and this diet that I'll be on for the rest of my life, is about just being healthy. Just make healthy choices every day, and not ever feel like I've figured it out. Because even if I have, can I keep it going every day is still going to be a thing. So, one of the things for me that helps me is I essentially have the same breakfast every morning. And it's not a requirement. I do think that of the things I would recommend to someone, eating breakfast every morning, no matter what it is, but eating something when you first wake up would be one of the things I would recommend, because it's just good practice to give your body some nutrients right away, because you haven't eaten in several hours. You've been asleep, for a long time. So to not have breakfast can really be dangerous, because then it's been like 12 hours or more since you've eaten something. And that can be a real trigger for overeating. But for me, one of the things that is good about me eating the same thing every morning for breakfast is that no matter what my day was like, good or bad, the day before, I get to start in the same place. So if I'm having different things every morning, then it's like, okay, here's the morning where my breakfast is 300 calories. So I've got more room to play with. Okay, here's the one where it's 400 calories. I got to be more careful. Like if I was always eating something different for breakfast, maybe I would go into some days like, oh no, I have to have the eggs because that's less calories. And I'm worried about today, or I had a bad day yesterday, so I'm gonna have the lesser breakfast, and already go into the day kind of feeling like I'm defeated, or feeling like I'm gonna play behind on my diet. By having the same thing every morning, it allows me to realize every day, like you were saying earlier, every day can be day one. And it's just, okay, here we go today. Here's my breakfast, same as always. Let's start the day on a good note. Right. Here's my healthy breakfast. Here's the thing I've been eating every morning. I've lost 136 pounds with this breakfast. Let's go. And so that rhythm is part of what helps me. Now, I could eat different things every morning for breakfast and also be fine, but having that consistency is a way that's helped me. And again, the first thing I'll tell someone when there comes to their diet is, find healthy foods you enjoy. It's always easier, like you were saying, finding alternatives. Like when I was cutting out diet soda, I replaced diet soda with water. I tend to just have cold water whenever I have something to drink. And there's nothing that they're two completely different things. But one of the things I've told myself too is that if I'm only drinking water and not Gatorade or orange juice or whatever else, I have more calories to put towards my food. And so that helps me is to know that I'm getting 0 calories out of my drink. Right. So it means I can eat more, right? So that was kind of one of the short-term kind of tricks to my, customized brain of like, how can I make this work? But at the same time, it's like you have to come up with the things that are going to work for you. And if there's certain foods that you just really would have a hard time removing, then don't remove them completely. Just try to minimize them a little bit. You know, I have a friend of mine who's big on sweets. He tends to have ice cream almost every day. Okay, well then just try to have less, you know, or find ways to, you know, spread it out a little bit better. Whatever it takes, whatever it can be, so that you can be in a healthier place. And that's different for everybody, because everyone's relationship with food is unique to their experiences, and no one has the same experience. So you have to realize what's going to work for you and what's not.
Yeah, it's taking that ownership with that relationship. Choosing, you got to put that choice out there. Be like, I want to have a very positive relationship with you talking to the food. And what does that now mean? How do we modify and evolve our relationship with it, right? Because it becomes switching the idea around, you know, I'm not a fan of the word diet. I'm a fan of, like, I'm choosing a lifestyle. This is a lifestyle I want to make a change for, right? The diet is goalpost oriented versus lifetime value oriented. And it sounds like you found a lifestyle in helping yourself be prepared in the morning. You get, like, mentally, you get a little check mark every morning. It's just like, yeah, I continued the momentum every single morning. I know in the morning I'm getting up, I'm having my same breakfast, and I know that it's a win. It's just like making your bed. It's just like, there's a win. There's another win. Now you're already starting that flywheel up first thing when you get up, winning, instead of going, what am I going to eat? Oh my God, now I got to make this choice. And you're costing decision points to go make these choices. And then you're hoping that you make the right ones in a moment that you might not be you might be a little foggy, and maybe you're waking up and you can make the wrong ones, or, you know, make ones that you'll regret later on.
Well, I think that's what it really comes down to ultimately, is being able to be honest with yourself as much as possible. What did you do that was good? What did you do that was bad? Could you avoid the things that were bad? Was it out of your control? Was it in your control? So few things in our life are in our control. Most things are out of our control. So how we react to those things is always going to be the only thing that we really can control. So how do we do that? And one thing I've explained to people many times is it really comes down to, you know, when someone's like, well, how do I start? What do I do? What's the best approach? What's the best diet? It's like, don't worry about any of that. Just start today. Just make today day one. Your only two goals are to eat healthier than you ate yesterday, and to do something on something active on purpose. You know, go for a walk or some version of something today. And you will then learn and build your diet and your customized diet and be able to prep your food and all over time. Because if you try to, like, educate yourself and research yourself on all the best diets approaches and try to create the perfect diet before you start your journey, you're going to be 80 years old before you find the perfect diet that's perfect for you. Like, you don't need to waste time on that before you start. Just start. And like I said, if you have 3 slices of pizza instead of 4, that's still healthier than you were eating. So you're still making better choices. And then as you're making those better choices, you can do the research and do the education. And because you need to trial and error, you need to see and practice, you know, was this dinner enough? Did it fill me up? Am I good for the day? Am I good for the rest of the night? People that are like, oh, you shouldn't eat after a certain clock. It's like, your body doesn't know what time it is. Like, your body just needs the nutrients it needs. So, like, for me, I always have something around 9:30 at night, because I don't go to bed until 11. So if I eat dinner at 6 and then don't go to bed till 11, that's 5 hours without food. That doesn't make sense if I'm supposed to eat every 2 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I have calories I still have in my bank or whatever at the end of the day, so I can have that last snack, which for me is usually some kind of fruit. So it's not like it's a bunch of calories, but it's the idea that it's like, I should be eating every couple hours. So I eat it in the morning at 7 a.m. when I wake up, and I'll have something at 9 or 10 o'clock. I'll have something at lunch. I'll have some kind of an afternoon snack. I'll have dinner around 6, and I'll have a late snack around 9:30. Now, do I do that every day? No, it's always all over the place. But that's kind of those are my benchmark kind of times of when I would like to eat. And when you have those kind of benchmarks, then whether you hit them or not, you at least know what your goals were. And then if you don't hit them on some days, you can kind of reassess and be like, oh, you know what? I ended up having like 1,000 calories at 4 o'clock because I didn't really have much of a lunch. And then all this food was around me and I just ate it all. And you're like, all right, so what can I do tomorrow to avoid that? Okay, well, maybe I stop buying this one thing. Maybe I make sure I have a different lunch so I'm a little bit more full. And maybe I try to portion out this thing over here a little bit better. Right. And you start to just every day, you start to reassess and reevaluate until you find a better way of doing things. And every day is an opportunity to learn from your past successes and your past mistakes.
Yeah. What you're explaining is very similar to my previous life in the software development industry is a retrospective where we just talk about start, stop, and continue. And you can do, if you're doing that every day or every week, you start to find your own cadence, and it starts to add up to that 1% better all the time. It's just about continuous improvement, right?
Well, and 1% better is so much more powerful than people realize. The idea of just trying to improve a little bit, just do something each day. And you don't even have to be better. Just do something each day that's positive. And, that was another approach I had with people was like, if you're a journal writer, get a blank, notebook, and every day write down something that was positive in that day, whether it was health related or not. Like, you saw a best friend or whatever it was, but you write something happened that was positive. And then on a day that feels like it's just the worst day ever, open that book up and realize every day you had something you could write in there. And then the day where you feel like you had nothing, the thing you write is, I literally own a journal that recalls all these wonderful moments in my life. And I'm thankful for that, to have that book. Right. And so not that that's something that everyone, I don't do that, but that's something my wife did for a while. That's something I've seen other people do that really helps them. But it's like, those are the kinds of things that we can do, is if we can analyze all these past successes and look at all these wonderful things that we've done in our life, then when we have a day that feels like the world is literally against us, then we know that, okay, it's probably temporary then, because I've found a way to be positive every single day. I've found ways to still do positive things every single day. So I can find a way to do something positive here. And maybe the positive thing on this day is to read this and get mentally healthier by reminding myself that I'm actually doing a lot of wonderful things. Because there's going to be days where you just don't feel like you can possibly do anything. So what are you going to do in those moments? Are you going to just feel sorry for yourself, or are you going to try to still come up with an approach of how best to approach it? And we're always going to make mistakes in those moments at times, but there are still lessons we can learn from that. And even if it takes time, it's something worth pursuing and worth going after.
Yeah. Anything worth having is worth working for, and it's going to be hard work, but with consistency over time, like, water can cut through mountains over time. Same thing with our habits and everything else, right? It doesn't, we live in a very instant gratification world, unfortunately. And it's the relearning of like, what could I accomplish in a year? I will underestimate that. And I'll overestimate what I could accomplish in a year, I should say. But in a decade, I will wildly underestimate what could be accomplished in a decade, right? And we have this opportunity to live in that world and build that world for ourselves.
I think that's too the other thing I've learned over time. There was a teacher I had, an English teacher I had in my junior year, who would start every day with a quote, and she had a quote that was, the journey is better than the journey is better than the destination.
Yeah.
And as a junior in high school, I was like, no, it's not. All that matters is the destination. Like, what's the point of the workouts if you can't get the prize? Like, that was as a junior, it was like I was a kid who thought I was going to play in the NFL one day. I was, it's like that. I was like, no, that's nothing. Now but it's like, now as an adult, I realize it's completely accurate. Like, that's 100% accurate. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone has to believe that, but to me, I totally believe it now. And it's something I didn't believe when I was younger, but it's like, if you put the time in, that time ends up being really enjoyable, because that's leading you to something that's successful, and that. So and then what's nice about what I'm doing now is that this journey is never going to stop. Like, when I stop breathing is when the journey ends. There's no finish line.
Yeah.
When people use the phrase, it's a marathon, not a sprint, it's like, no, it's neither. The marathon, not a sprint, is just a weight loss journey. The health journey is not either. It's not a race. It's a lifelong journey, and it's going to take me through the rest of my life. And because I know that now, it's not about it. There's no competition. I'm not competing against anybody. I'm not competing for anything. I'm just trying each day to be the best version of myself and try to live my best version of my life. And if I do that successfully, that's wonderful, but I still want to be able to do it tomorrow.
Right.
And every day is a new opportunity to do that. And so will I accomplish all my goals? Maybe not, but that's why you have short-term and long-term goals. And I agree with you. It's like, make those long-term goals seem unreachable, because if you fight for it and fail, how close did you get? Did you get closer than you would have if you didn't set that goal? Like, I had set a goal when I was 320 to lose 100 pounds in a year, which I thought was reasonable, but I also didn't think I'd necessarily do that. I lost 121 pounds in that year. And the reason I went so far over had nothing to do with any like amazing thing I did. It was just the consistency. It was just the fact that I put time in every day. I didn't lose weight every day. I didn't have nothing but great days. I actually gained a few pounds from one month to another. My weigh-in, I actually gained some weight during one of the months. But I realized kind of what my mistakes were, and then I went back down again.
Yeah.
And again, it's like every journey is going to look like a roller coaster, but most people love roller coasters, and we love them because of the thrill of them, right? So you have to learn that journey is actually the fun. And if you're not having fun on your journey, you're probably on the wrong journey. Yeah, or at least you're approaching it the wrong way, because if you spend years towards something and then get it, but you didn't enjoy any part of that journey, I don't know if you're going to actually enjoy the prize.
Oh, you definitely won't.
It's like someone who spends their whole life trying to graduate from Stanford or whatever. Graduation day might be enjoyable, but if you really hated every moment up until then, I don't know if you're necessarily going to feel that great the next day. No, you might feel amazing the day of, because it's like, I worked so hard for this and I got it. I can't believe I got it. And that is amazing. Yeah. But if you're going after something just because other people wanted you to, or just because of other reasons, and you're not actually enjoying the journey, it's very likely you're not going to like the destination, or at least not anywhere near as much as you thought. Plus, that's such a short amount of time. Yeah. If your goal is to win a championship and your team wins the championship, that legacy lasts forever, but that feeling only lasts a few minutes. Yeah. The rest of your life, what are you going to do with that? The rest of that time, you can reflect on that amazing accomplishment, but is that all you're going to do? Or are you going to find other things to fulfill your time and fill your goals and your needs? And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, is if your journey is worth pursuing and you're enjoying your journey, the destination's almost irrelevant, because you're going to improve your life every single day. And whether or not you hit that quote unquote destination that you had initially planned, you might actually surpass it beyond your wildest dreams, or you might just get much closer than you ever thought. Right. And both of those are amazing. And if you don't actually achieve the goal, it doesn't mean that you accomplished nothing. Because if you're enjoying the journey, then you accomplished having successful days, several days in a row for a long stretch of time. That's a beautiful thing. And if you embrace that, then any journey you go on is great. The example I gave about the guitar, like, I don't expect to ever be Slash, but if I played the guitar enough and learned enough, and I could play a song really beautifully, maybe it's just one song, but I would really enjoy the whole process to get to that point. It's like, man, I never even touched a guitar before. Now I'm playing, Stairway to Heaven or whatever whatever the song is. But it's like, that would still be a beautiful, incredible accomplishment, even if I didn't ever become like a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or toured and made, thousands of people scream. Like, those things are very unlikely. I could maybe shoot for those, but if in the meantime I learned how to play the guitar much better than I ever did, that still should matter. Yeah. And if that isn't going to matter, then maybe you're setting yourself for the wrong goal. Because if your goal was to be famous, it's like, well, then that's not necessarily the best approach.
No, it's 100% correct. I agree with you 100%, because I talk about enjoying the journey, and all my other content you have to enjoy it, right? That's what takes the difference from like when you're falling down the roller coaster, screaming, is this fun? And you're going back up. Be like, not each one of those humps is a moment. Right. And you might not enjoy or like every moment, but if you can take that all about, be like, did I enjoy this journey? Be like, yeah, I really I got a lot from this, versus I hated every step of the way. Be like, that's a life not lived well.
Absolutely. And I think that's what it comes down to. I think ultimately is if in our lives, just in general, the careers we choose, the friends we're around, every possible facet of our life, if we aren't enjoying the journey, then we might need to reevaluate. If you're not enjoying some of the friends you have, like if some of your friends are always really toxic and ugly around you and they're always being negative, maybe that's not the person you should be spending more time with. Just because you happen to have a lot of time invested in them, maybe that's not the person you should be spending time with. If the career you have, the job, you really actually hate it and you're just not enjoying your days, but you're only in it because of the healthcare or because of the paycheck. It's like, there's a lot of other places that have healthcare and have paychecks. Maybe you should find another place. And that's not easy, but neither is anything else. And you're certainly not living an easy life if you hate your job or if you hate your friends or, those things. Just because we have time invested doesn't mean we should continue to invest time into everything. It's scary to go 180 on something and to completely change something. But if changing your job or changing your friends or changing your health or whatever else it is, if that would end up leading to a better journey, then it probably is going to be worth it. And it's not going to be easy, but again, anything worth doing usually is going to be really, really hard. Right.
Short-term pain for
not the most poignant movie in the world, but A League of Their Own kind of said it right. It's like, it's supposed to be hard. Yeah. It's the hard that makes it great. That's what, most things are hard. And, to have a really good friendship with someone is hard. It takes a lot of time, a lot of listening. There's a lot of things that go into good relationships, let alone good careers or whatever else. But anything worth doing is going to be hard, but it's worth it because that's the point. Yeah. You put in the right amount of time and investment into something and you really care about something, it's going to lead to a much more meaningful, fulfilling life. And if you don't like your journey, it's going to only lead to disappointment, even if it's just regret that you could have done something else. Yeah. But it could be a lot worse than that. So it's like if you're going to work your butt off, you might as well work it off in the things that you love to do. Exactly. And even if that's not, financially feasible, well, then find something that is, so that you can pursue your other dreams in the meantime. Yeah. Someone who wants to be a great artist, they're not going to just be able to immediately start selling their art, but maybe find a career where you've got the space and the time to work on your art on the side so that you can do something you really truly care about while making enough money to survive on that time.
Oh, yes. 100% yes. You've dropped a ton of gems here today, Michael. I'm looking up at the clock. Remember when I said, it's going to be like 40 minutes? Like, we're at 58 minutes. So like this one, we really got into it and enjoyed the conversation. So I want to be respectful of your time. Out of all the pieces that you've dropped, if we could jump into a time machine right now and we go 10 years back in time, we open the door and you have one thing to say to that younger Michael, what would it be?
Well, I'm 40 years old. So when I was 30, the thing that I learned when I was 38 is what I've already kind of alluded to, is this idea that it's not about weight loss, it's about health. And that really, truly, even though I've learned other things in my life and, I wasn't, there was a lot of other things I could have been thinking about. My health was something that was destined to fail when I was 30 years old. I was setting myself up for failure with my habits. And I had gotten to a place in 2010, I got married. And so I was as happy as I could be in that moment, but I was gaining weight because it was like, I'm happy and married now. So it doesn't matter if I gain weight here or there. It's like, but the idea that if I want to live the best version of my life, I need to have the health to support it. And if I get unhealthy, then that's going to lead to a lot of unhealthy things that could lead to a much different life. And that ultimately would be the thing I would really tell myself, is that, it's this approach to your life really has to be about your long-term health. And that if you do that, everything else becomes better and easier. I sleep better. I'm more active. I'm able to run around with my kid more. All the things that I would wanted to have done when I was 30, I wasn't going to be able to do by 35 because of the ways I'd kind of sabotaged my health. And when I'd lost weight before, it was because I was so focused on the number on the scale instead of my healthy habits. And so that's really as simple as it would come down to, is that I needed to focus on health, and that would then lead to being emotionally healthier, mentally healthier, and as well as physically healthier. But to really look at things from that long-term perspective of just each day, find ways to be healthy, make healthy food choices, make healthy activity choices, stop being inactive, stop eating unhealthy just because you can, and stop caring more about your taste buds than you do about your health. Because I spent 38 years caring more about my taste buds than I did about my health. And anytime I ate healthy food, the first 38 years of my life, it wasn't, except for those 2 short diets, it wasn't because they were healthy foods, it's because I actually just ended up liking them too. If I had some grilled chicken, it wasn't because it's like, oh, I'm going to be healthy now. It's like, no, grilled chicken tastes good.
Yeah.
And so ultimately it was like, all right, am I really going to space my entire existence on my taste buds instead of my health? No, I should focus more on my health. And then now I've got the best of both worlds, because the foods I eat, I enjoy the taste of, but they're also really good for me. So that combination has made all the difference, but it came from a place of focusing on my health and the journey versus just focusing on the scale and the numbers on the scale.
Beautifully said, my friend. Beautifully said. Man, Michael, this has been a great conversation. Again, just thank you so much for being on it and sharing your journey through all this. And honestly, I look forward to continuing to watch your adventures on TikTok and YouTube as you continue to go on and see what comes up next in your journey.
Well, I hope I've been able to help some people that are watch your show and give them some kind of ideas into maybe how they can approach, their health or just their life in general, and just realize that, my look at things and my outlook is just one approach. But I think ultimately it's more about learning to customize your life to what makes sense for you. And whatever that ends up being is probably the best approach. And, I try to let people know that, my journey, I can help you customize it as much as you want, but really it comes down to what do you want and why do you want it? And, how are you going to get there? And if you don't know the answers to those questions, then me or someone else can certainly help you with that. But it really does come down to, what is your goal and why is it your goal and how are you planning on getting there? And this kind of learning how to customize your life to fit what you want it to look like. And for me, I knew that the first kind of foundational piece was to get my health right. And once I did that, everything else could come into place easier for me. So I'm just appreciative to have a platform now where I can help people that don't know how to do that, and be able to help them by literally just being honest and just sharing with them what's worked for me, what helps me, and what doesn't help me, and be able to kind of decipher, the reasons why.
Awesome, man. Well, people can find you on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and as well down in the show notes, we have a link to Michael's book. So make sure to get connected and follow along with his journey. Until next time, everybody, this is Gene, and this has been another episode of the LiveCast Conversations With. We'll see you next Wednesday.